The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
Good day with your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw. First with the highlights. A major agriculture investment conference is billed for Guyana. A man has been charged with having a child watch a sexual act. And in the region, CARICOM to mount fact-finding mission to Haiti. And you'll have your latest international news coming from the BBC. Do stay tuned.
Advertise with us on News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM for best coverage on programs on motivation, beauty and health, parenting and relationships, knowing your rights, and a variety of enlightening content, and get value for your money. Call our helpful staff today on 223-1056 or 223-1041 today.
Now for the news in detail. Guyana is gearing up for a major investment in agriculture conference. The conference will be held from May 19 to 21. Already, Republic Bank has agreed to provide $100 million to governments to lend farmers. Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley says some of the agriculture initiatives will be led by the private sector and the other by governments. She hopes that the regional business community will also invest in the agriculture drive.
In addition, the Caribbean Private Sector Organization made a presentation looking at the poultry sector in particular and recognizing the opportunities there. So we hope that the private sector, the regional private sector, will also come to the table ready to make the decisions for investment that will allow us to achieve this target of 25 by 25.
Guyana, through a joint initiative between the private sector and the government, has begun large-scale production of soya and corn in the intermediate savanna. CARICOM leaders have agreed to consider what should be the amount of local content and over what period. This comes in the wake of concerns by the Caribbean Private Sector Organization, CPSO, about whether Guyana's local content legislation is breaching Caribbean Community CARICOM single market rules. Briefing the media on the outcome of the CARICOM mid-term summit that was held on March 1 and 2 in Belize, Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley said CARICOM leaders have decided to find a way of addressing local content without breaching the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas that governs the single market.
Within the context of the discussions on the CARICOM single market and economy, we placed before heads and heads accepted that there is need for us to review the issue of local content. And there's an open-ended committee of member states that will start to work very shortly, recognizing that in new areas of economic activity, what we call sunrise industries, there may well be, and I certainly support, that there is a case for some level of local content. And the issue will be, what should that percentage of local content be? And what is the timeline that it should be valid for? Because if you're giving it to a sunrise industry, then they don't need it 30 years from now or 20 years from now.
Ms. Mottley says Guyana's need for local content is justifiable.
We're going to do the discussions among ourselves with a view towards recommending to the full conference of heads what the appropriate framework should be, such that no one will be held in breach for wanting to do that which is most natural. That if we accept that we share the burden in hard times, then we must share the bounty in good times too. And that is all that we understand Guyana and other countries that want to introduce local content in emerging industries are seeking to do.
The Caribbean Private Sector Organization has said that Guyana's local content legislation violates the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. The opposition, a Partnership for National Unity, plus Alliance for Change, had issued a similar warning during debate on the legislation, but the government had shrugged off those concerns. ExxonMobil says that it has significantly reduced its flaring from the floating production, storage, and offloading FPSO vessel Liza Destiny. That oil-producing vessel had been dogged by repeated problems with its flash gas compressor. This had resulted in the flaring of a large amount of natural gas into the atmosphere, causing ExxonMobil Guyana to pay fines to the Environmental Protection Agency. After significant works lasting several months, the flash gas compressor has been reinstalled. Now, ExxonMobil Guyana's production manager Mike Ryan tells News Talk Radio Guyana that flaring from the Liza Destiny FPSO has been reduced significantly, and the company wants to reduce it even further.
We've been able to use the current machine we have to get down to 4%. So meaning we are now injecting or consuming 96% of the gas that we're producing from Liza Destiny. So we're at 4%, I want to get to 1. So Dennis, it's important that you put that in context that we're not flaring all the gas. We are working extremely hard to continue to lower that, and the team has found innovative ways.
ExxonMobil Guyana's production manager, Mike Ryan. A resident of Susdike Back Road, East Bank Demerara, has been sentenced to 3 years imprisonment and fined $10.5 million for being in possession of narcotics for the purpose of trafficking. Police say that the penalty was imposed on 37-year-old Quincy Innes. He appeared virtually at the Linden Magistrates Court before Magistrate Wanda Fortune, where the charge was read to him. He pleaded guilty. A 22-year-old man has been charged with causing a child under 16 years old to watch a sexual act. The incident occurred on December 4. Charged with the offense is a resident of Silvertown, Wismar, Linden. He appeared before Magistrate Wanda Fortune. The accused was not required to plead and was placed on $75,000 bail. The matter has been postponed to the 23rd of March 2022. Now for the news in the region. Caribbean Community CARICOM leaders have decided to dispatch a team to Haiti in the coming weeks in an effort to resolve the worsening political situation there. This announcement was made by CARICOM Chairman Belize's Prime Minister Juan Breseno at a news conference at the close of a midterm summit of regional leaders.
It's going to be ministers and experts because we want to be able to go in and to come out with an actual plan as to how we can help Haiti, and at the same time to be able to try to reach out to the rest of the international community to be able to help in the actual development of the country. That would be a more medium and long-term part of the plan that we want to work with.
That the CARICOM chairman says key issues are creating long-term development plan and ensuring there are credible elections.
We're saying that we will establish a CARICOM team to be able to visit Haiti with a view to providing support in the facilitation of dialogue. Because when there are so many different competing groups, it's important for us to be able to move forward in Haiti that we have to bring everyone around the table. We have to try to support, we have to support the administration in holding credible elections. It's of no use to have an election right now and then you have a large portion of the population not accepting that. And also, as CARICOM, we want to be able to support a framework for long-term development and democracy through technical assistance.
Haiti is yet to hold the long-awaited elections, and the security situation is not improving. Foreigners are being kidnapped and held for ransom. Last year, a group of Colombian mercenaries with links to the Haitian community invaded the private residence of President Jovenel Moïse and assassinated him. In Suriname, almost all hospitals face major problems. The National Hospital Council yesterday told the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Public Health that the hospitals do not have sufficient money to cover operational costs. Star News also reports that the committee heard that supplies are no longer giving credit to the hospitals. The National Hospital Council also informed that hospital warehouses are often empty and skilled personnel have gone abroad. During yesterday's public meeting, National Democratic Party faction leader Rabin Parmesar called attention to the situation in the healthcare system. He argued that there is a health crisis. More than 200 nurses have left Suriname in recent months. In Trinidad, after carefully combing through thick crude, the decomposing body of the fourth diver, Rishi Nagasar, was finally recovered during the wee hours of Thursday morning. In a statement, Paria Fuel Trading announced that the body was recovered at 12:36 a.m. The Trinidad Guardian newspaper reports that the company said it has offered counseling support to the families and loved ones of the four divers. On Tuesday, one day after the three other divers were found, Paria began searching the line using robotic cameras. The recovery operation was described as complex. Paria said it had to be conducted with extreme care, given the fact that the bodies were lodged behind diving equipment in a 30-inch pipeline 60 feet below the surface and more than 100 feet along the seabed. And lastly, in the region, the British Virgin Islands, a major police operation has led to charges against 4 persons in connection with the discovery of illicit drugs and firearms. Those charged include a Trinidadian 31-year-old Kellon Fortune. He has been charged with 5 counts of keeping a prohibited weapon, 1 count of keeping an unlicensed firearm, and 1 count of overstaying. Mr. Fortune is to appear before the magistrate's court at the next available sitting. 2 nationals of the British Virgin Islands have been charged with unlawful possession of a controlled drug with intent to supply as a result of Tuesday's operation. And here now is your international news from the BBC.
This is Julie Campbell with the BBC News. The NATO sanctions against Stoltenberg says the alliance must ensure that the conflict in Ukraine does not spread beyond its borders. Speaking after a meeting of NATO and other Western foreign ministers, he said it was agreed that NATO planes and troops should not operate in Ukrainian airspace or territory confronting Russian forces.
We have already strengthened our deterrence and defence, on land, in the air and at sea. Allies from North America and Europe have sent thousands more troops to the eastern part of the alliance. We are deploying the NATO response force for the first time, and we have over 130 jets at high alert and over 200 ships from the high north to the Mediterranean.
The head of the UN nuclear watchdog says the seizure by Russian troops of Ukraine's largest nuclear power station has not resulted in a release of radioactive material. Fire had broken out at the Zaporizhzhia complex during shelling. Rafael Grossi said it was fortunate the reactors weren't damaged. He's offered to travel to another nuclear site in Ukraine now controlled by Russia. Herman Halushenko is Ukraine's energy minister.
This is a real nuclear terrorism, what has happened, because they shell directly to the station. They know what they did. We are talking about 6 units, and that is true that the Zaporizhzhia NPP is the biggest in Europe. But despite that, in the Zaporizhzhia station, we also have a storage of nuclear waste. And in case they shell this storage, we would get really incredible situation. And that is not even the question of Ukraine.
Fierce fighting continues in southern and northern Ukraine as Russian forces try to take more territory. The Ukrainian authorities say an attack by Russian forces on the southern port of Mykolaiv has been repelled. Another southern port, Mariupol, which is encircled, remains under siege with heavy shelling. Lise Doucette is in the capital, Kiev.
From where we're standing, I can still see the Ukrainian flag snapping in the wind, but beyond that, this city is now unrecognizable. Life has dropped underground, and I have to say that in these last 2 days, and even in these last few hours, there is a constant barrage of explosions, Russian attacks on this city. They're still on the edges, but in some places they're about 10 to 15 miles where we are now.
The United Nations says 500,000 children are among the 1.2 million people who've been forced to flee Ukraine by worsening violence and the threat of advancing Russian troops. The UN Refugee Agency estimates that more than 4 million people could eventually move into neighbouring countries. It says almost 650,000 people have gone to Poland. The country is home to a large Ukrainian community. World News from the BBC. The UN Human Rights Council has voted overwhelmingly to create a high-level commission of inquiry into alleged violations committed during Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Only 2 countries, Russia itself and Eritrea, voted against the resolution. Both houses of the Russian parliament have passed legislation making the spread of fake information about the armed forces a criminal offence, with prison sentences of up to 15 years, as well as heavy fines. Lesser penalties can be applied to people calling for sanctions against the country. The opening ceremony of the Winter Paralympic Games has taken place in Beijing after days of controversy linked to Russia's war on Ukraine. Among the athletes and guides parading through the Bird's Nest Stadium was the 54-person Ukrainian delegation. The head of Ukraine's National Paralympic Committee has described their presence in Beijing as a miracle, saying many had to escape bombardment and shelling to get there. A bomb blast at a crowded mosque in the northwestern Pakistani city of Peshawar has killed at least 56 people. Police said dozens had been injured in the suspected suicide attack during Friday prayers at the Shia mosque. The legendary Australian cricketer Shane Warne has died at the age of 52. His management said he had suffered a suspected heart attack at his villa in Thailand. Shane Warne was considered to many to be the greatest spin bowler of all time. Here's Ollie Foster.
A 15-year Test career with Australia, over 1,000 wickets across all formats of the game, 708 Test wickets. But he really did redefine the art of spin. His leg spin, many will remember the ball of the century against England, his first delivery in an Ashes Test against Mike Gatting at Old Trafford, and that really set him on his way, really, for superstardom. Shane Warne was absolute box office.
BBC News.
And that was your international news from the BBC. Here now is a recap of your highlights. A major agriculture investment conference is billed for Guyana. A man has been charged with having a child watch a sexual act. And in the region, CARICOM to mount fact-finding mission to Haiti. And you had your latest international news coming from the BBC. And that was your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com